3 years, 2 months, and 11 days. That's how long it's been since my phone rang and his name showed up on the screen. Now, I want to tell you something before we go any further. I'm not here to make you feel sorry for me. I didn't sit down at this table today to cry in front of a camera. I sat down because somebody needs to hear what I'm about to say. And if it's you, if you're listening to an old woman's voice right now because your own phone has gone quiet too, then honey, this one's for you. My name doesn't matter much. What matters is I'm 89 years old. I've buried a husband. I served this country overseas when they barely let women like me hold a rank worth respecting, and I raised one son mostly by myself in a 2-bedroom house with a leaking roof and a whole lot of prayer. And 3 years ago, that son, my only child, stopped calling. No fight, no slammed door, no big blow-up you could point to and say, that's when it happened. It was quieter than that. It was worse than that. It was just silence. The kind that creeps in slow, like water under a door, until one day you look up and realize the whole room's flooded and you didn't even hear it coming. Here's the thing I need you to understand before I tell you the rest of this story. The day I stopped waiting by that phone was the day my life actually started again. Now stay with me, because I'm not going to rush this. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, what it did to me, and what I did about it. Because there was a night, about 2 years ago, sitting alone in my kitchen at 11 o'clock, when I made a decision that changed everything. I'll get there, but first, you need to understand how a mother ends up sitting alone in a kitchen at 89 years old, wondering where she went wrong. Let's start from the beginning. I served overseas for a handful of years when I was young. Logistics mostly, some of the ugliest years of my life and some of the proudest. I won't dwell on that part too long, because that's not really what today is about. But I'll say this much. The discipline I learned in uniform, the way you learn to keep moving even when your legs don't want to, the way you learn that falling apart is a luxury you don't always get to have. That's the woman who came home and raised a son alone after his father passed. His name was David. Still is, I suppose, wherever he is now. I raised David the way I was trained to do everything, with structure, with love, but love that came out stern sometimes, because I didn't know any other way to keep a boy safe in a world that wasn't gentle with boys who looked like him. I worked 2 jobs some years. I sat up nights helping him with homework I barely understood myself. I went to every single school function, sat in the front row, clapped until my hands hurt. Here's the thing about raising a child alone. You pour so much of yourself into them that you forget to keep anything for yourself. I didn't remarry, didn't really date. My whole world had one son in it, and that son was my boy. David grew up, went to college, first in our family to do it, and Lord was I proud. Got married to a woman named Renee, had 2 children of his own, and for a long time things were good. Sunday dinners, Christmas mornings, phone calls just to hear my voice, he used to say. Then his father-in-law passed, and something shifted. I won't sit here and pretend I know exactly what happened in David's heart, because a mother can guess, but she can't ever fully know. What I do know is this. After that funeral, the calls got shorter, then less frequent. Then it was texts instead of calls. Then it was nothing at all. Here's a truth nobody tells you about grown children. You don't lose them all at once. You lose them one missed Sunday at a time. I want to talk about something for a minute, because I think a whole lot of you watching this know exactly what I'm describing. There's a specific kind of pain that comes from a phone that doesn't ring. It's not like grief from a death. When somebody dies, the world at least agrees to be sad with you. People bring casseroles. People say, "I'm so sorry for your loss." There's a ceremony to it, a shape. But when your living child stops calling, there's no ceremony for that. There's no casserole for that. You just sit with an ache that has no name, wondering what you did, replaying every conversation like you're looking for the crack in the dam. I used to keep my phone on the kitchen table, face up, ringer on full volume, like it was a soldier waiting for orders. I'd wash dishes with one eye on that screen. I'd fall asleep with it in my hand some nights. Shocking thing I learned, and I want you to really hear this. The waiting hurt worse than the silence itself. I called David on his birthday for 2 years straight, after the calls stopped. First year he picked up, short and polite, like I was a telemarketer he was too kind to hang up on. Second year, straight to voicemail. I left a message singing happy birthday in a shaky old voice, and I never heard a word back. Now here's a metaphor I want to give you, because I think it explains this better than I can plain. Grief over a living person who's chosen distance is like standing in a garden you planted with your own 2 hands, watching it wither, but you're not allowed to walk away, and you're not allowed to water it either, because the hose is in somebody else's hands now, and they've decided not to pick it up. That was me. Standing in a dying garden I wasn't allowed to tend. I want to be honest with you about something else too. I got angry, real angry. There were nights I sat in that kitchen and I was furious. After everything I gave that boy, the jobs I worked, the nights I didn't sleep, the years I gave up any life of my own for him, and this was the thanks? This silence. And then there were other nights I wasn't angry at all. I was just so ashamed. Ashamed like maybe I really had failed somewhere and just couldn't see it. That shame, friends, is a heavier weight than the anger ever was. So let me take you to that night I mentioned at the start. About 2 years ago now. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays used to be trash night, and I'd just rolled the bin back up the driveway in the dark, cold enough that my knees were complaining the whole way. I came inside, sat down at that same kitchen table, and I looked at my phone sitting there, silent as a stone. And something in me just broke. Not in a dramatic way, not tears and screaming. It was quieter than that. I looked at that phone and I thought, I am 87 years old. I do not know how many good years I have left, and I am spending them waiting on a man who is not coming. Now here's the shocking part, and I want you to sit with this, because it took me 2 years of silence to understand it. Waiting for someone to love you the way they used to is its own kind of prison. And I had built the bars myself, one hopeful phone call at a time. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I got up from that table and I made myself a real dinner, not a sad little plate eaten standing over the sink, but a real dinner, on my good china, with a candle lit, sitting at that table like I mattered, like I was somebody worth cooking for, and I cried through most of it, if I'm honest with you, but I finished the whole plate. That was the beginning. Here's the thing. Nobody tells old folks like me. Being alone and being lonely are 2 completely different countries, and you get to choose which one you live in. So let me tell you what I built, brick by brick, over these last 2 years. First, I found my people again. Not family, people. There's a senior center about 15 minutes from my house that I used to drive past for years and never stop at. I finally walked in one Wednesday morning, scared as a rabbit, and found a table of women playing cards who hollered at me to sit down and learn spades. I didn't know a soul. Now those women know more about my day-to-day life than my own son does. We laugh until my sides hurt. One of them, Miss Pauline, calls me every single morning at 8:15 just to say good morning. Every single morning. Here's a truth. Family is not always blood. Sometimes family is a woman named Pauline who shows up on time every day without being asked twice. Second, I went back to church, but not the way I used to. I'd gone my whole life out of habit, out of duty. This time I went because I needed it. I joined the choir, if you can believe that, cracked old voice and all. Nobody cared that I couldn't hit the high notes anymore. They just wanted me there. And somewhere in those Sunday mornings, I found my faith again, not as a rule book, but as a comfort. I stopped praying, please make him call. I started praying, thank you for the day I've been given. That shift alone changed my whole nervous system, I swear it did. Third, I got serious about my body. Now, I've got a hip that complains and a knee that's seen better decades. But I started walking every morning, just to the corner and back at first. Now I walk nearly a mile most days, slow as molasses, but I do it. I learned that grief sits in the body if you don't move it out. Every step was like shaking loose a little bit of that old ache. Fourth, and this might surprise you, I started telling my stories. This right here, this camera, these videos, this became part of my healing. Because here's what I realized. I spent decades being somebody's mother, somebody's soldier, somebody's wife. I never once got to just be a woman with a life worth talking about, on her own terms. Now I do. And every message I get from somebody watching saying you helped me get through my night, that fills a cup that phone calls used to fill. I want to say something plain, because I think it matters. I did reach out to David one more time, about 8 months ago. Sent a letter, real ink and paper, no expectations attached. Told him I loved him, that the door was open, and that I wasn't angry anymore. I haven't heard back, and here's the part that might shock you. I'm at peace with that. Not because it doesn't hurt, it does, some days, like a phantom limb, but because I refuse to let his silence write the whole story of my life. Look, if you are sitting alone right now waiting on a phone call that hasn't come in months or years, I need you to hear me clearly. Your worth was never sitting inside that phone. It never lived in whether somebody chose to dial your number today. Here's the metaphor I keep coming back to. You are not a lighthouse that only shines when a ship comes looking for it. You are the whole ocean, vast, full, alive with or without anybody sailing across you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the ache goes away completely, because that would be a lie, and at 89, I don't have the patience left for lying to you. What I will tell you is this. The ache gets smaller when you stop feeding it and start feeding yourself instead. Find your Miss Pauline. Find your card table, your choir pew, your morning walk. Tell your stories to somebody, even if it's just this camera, even if it's just a stranger on the internet who needed to hear an old woman say, "You are still worth showing up for." And if your child, your grandchild, whoever's gone quiet on you, if they ever do call again, let the door be open. Don't slam it out of pride, but don't you dare sit behind it waiting either. Live, right now, today, while you've still got legs to walk with and breath to laugh with. 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days since that phone rang with his name on it. But I want to tell you something. I stopped counting about 6 months ago, not because I forgot, because I finally had better things to count. Good mornings, good meals, good friends, a life that's mine. If this story meant something to you, stay a while longer. I've got more to tell you. And if you're the one who hasn't called your mama in a while, well, maybe tonight's the night. I'll see you in the next one.